Super excited about this car, even though it's just a humble daily driver. Hello and welcome back to the Volkswizard channel. Now, back in the summer of 2019, I attended the launch of a brand new car that blew me away with its combination of performance and economy. And I swore then that one day I'd make that car my perfect daily driver. Well, today, 4.5 years later, that day is going to come. It's taken longer than expected thanks to COVID and the crazy used car prices that followed. But right now, I'd say the used car market is as stable as it has been for a very, very long time. And it's a perfect time to buy that internal combustion engine car you've always promised yourself before the used car market starts to be dominated with electric vehicles that nobody actually wants and prices rocket once again. So today we're going to travel to Brackley in Northamptonshire, where I'm going to reveal to you the brand new Volkswizard daily driver that will replace my trusty, but not rusty, Mk7.5 Golf GTD Estate. Welcome to APS in Brackley. They've been here for about 20 years. They started off with one unit just doing car servicing and modifications. They've dropped the modifications now pretty much. They still do the servicing, but they've also got a car storage facility, a car showroom, and their own body shop. Now, I've known the guys here for pretty much all of those 20 years. They used to advertise in Volkswagen Driver and Audi Driver magazines, and I used to write for those magazines. And if there was ever a job I couldn't do on one of my own cars, I'd come all this way to get it done by these guys because I know they do a proper job. The first job they did for me was a cam belt change on my B5 Audi RS4 back in 2007, which brings me nicely onto the car that we are collecting today. Before we whip the cover off my new daily driver, I just want to remind you guys how you can support the channel. As ever, the easiest way to do that is simply to subscribe. But there's another way that can also benefit you, and that is to sell me your interesting Volkswagen Group performance car from the last 5 years. Now, we're not completely strict on the age rule because there are some wonderful older cars. So if you've got one of those that's in above average condition, then also please get in touch, particularly Mk7 Golf GTD Club Sport and a Club Sport S, and even TCR, which is now getting up to about 5 years old. But generally, we're looking for cars up to 5 years old, full service history, really good condition, average mileage or below, and they must be completely unmodified. So if you've got something like that, get in touch with me directly, andrew@volkswizard.co.uk, or if you've got something even closer, I'll give you a very quick yes or no, and if it's yes, I'll give you a very prompt valuation. Now the time has come to reveal the new Volkswizard daily driver. This, by the way, is Ed from APS. I'm sure Ed will be familiar to a lot of you guys. You've been a pleasure to deal with. And yeah, I'm super excited about this car, even though it's just a humble daily driver. So let's get the cover off. We're doing this together so we don't scratch the paint because, as you can see, it's black and it's probably a bit more high maintenance than is ideal for a daily driver, but at least we're starting off with a good shine thanks to Khalid at Dimension Detailing, who you use for all your cars, don't you, Ed?
It does a fantastic job. Very, very good.
So it's an Audi, it's an Estate, it's an S4, but it's important to point out it's a diesel. In 2019, for the European market, Audi deleted the petrol S4 and replaced it with a 3-litre diesel. Similar horsepower, similar performance, 700 Newton meters of torque. This is an early car. It's in black, metallic black. It's got an interesting spec, which I'll give you a tour of now, because these early cars are like a bit higgledy-piggledy. They miss some things, but they've also got some really good things that you wouldn't normally get. Okay, so this is one of the first S4 TDIs to hit the UK. It's a September 2019 range, which was about a month after the press launch. Those cars were on a 19 reg. Obviously, the dealer demos, they waited until September the 1st. This document is the media information document that I got at that press launch, and I've kept it through 3 house moves just for this day. It's got all this really useful information that I can share with you, I guess some of it in this video. So, 347 metric horsepower, 700 Newton meters of torque, 0 to 60 with four-wheel drive, of course, 4.9 seconds for the Avant. It's a quick car, and WLTP combined MPG 40.9. There's no other car that can be that quick and that economical. Well, not that I know of. Anyway, and definitely not as beautifully made as this Audi. This is peak Audi for me. So it's compact. It's not too big. It's an estate car, which I think fast Audis should always be. And it's a pre-Dieselgate car, which I think is quite important. So the B9 Generation A4 came out about 2015. That car was developed pre-Dieselgate. This is a facelift for 2019, but it's still, apart from some tweaks to the styling that give it like bigger rear wheel arches, there's some blisters here now instead of being slab-sided like the pre-facelift car. It's pretty much the same car. So it's a solid, well-made car with a beautiful interior. I will show you later. This car's metallic black. One of the controversial things about this car is that it's got two fake exhausts. So these two are just completely solid, and these two are actually just tips on the bumper, but there are two exhaust pipes down there, unlike on the C8 generation S6, which again is diesel. At least it's got two working tips and not completely fake. It's got the later LED lights, which are from the kind of like the A6, C8, so they're a bit fresher looking than the pre-facelift cars. And this car is a bit of a funny spec. So it's a launch spec car. There were three trim levels. You had base model, Black Edition and Vorsprung. Because this is a launch spec car, it's got bits of all of those cars. So I'll show you in a sec. It doesn't have comfort and sound pack, which Audi UK made a big fuss about at this presentation, but the good thing about that is that we don't have keyless entry, which is much better for security. So yeah, keyless is great, but at least I can sleep at night knowing it will still be there. Under the bonnet then, 3-litre turbo diesel V6, one turbo, but what's special about this car is it's got basically an electric supercharger that fills in the torque deficit from before the turbo boosts up, and that uses electricity from the mild hybrid system. So this car catches electricity, stores it in a battery, and it deploys it in various ways. It can coast with the engine off for up to 40 seconds, or it can use it to give the car a bit more of a kick. So it's clever use of electricity, not maybe completely reliable. So this is a very complicated car. The GTD is pretty complicated, but this has got AdBlue, it's got this mild hybrid thing, it's got EGR and turbo and all this stuff that potentially could go wrong. So it'll be an interesting test of reliability. Right, let's have a look inside. By the way, 19-inch wheels, 255 35/19 tyres, which is exactly the same as the tyre on the B7 RS4. Okay, in here, we've got grey leather. We've got S4 on the ground there, so that's pretty cool. Beautiful quality, everything. It's just carbon fibre as well. Look at that. It's actually quite convincing, the quality of it. It looks really expensive. This is just lovely. Alcantara there. Carpet quality. Well, I'm a carpet nerd. The floor mats are great. Look, they can even put the Audi logo in the floor mats. The pile's so good. We've got the lines in the carpet there as well, which is usually a sign of a high quality carpet. So yes, I would have that in my home. The seats are worth a mention. Diamond leather, extendable thigh support, loads of adjustment, all electric, lumbar, and we have massage, 3 different types of massage you can control from the infotainment system. We've got the head-up display on this car, which is okay as long as you're not wearing polarized sunglasses, flat bottom steering wheel. This is peak Audi from a cabin perspective as well. So there's no real compromise on material quality. This is when they were at their best, and it sort of shocks me that 2 years later they chucked out the A3, which was probably a little bit less good than this with the old generation, the 8V generation, but now the 8Y is just not very nice inside, and this is good. I know it's an S car, I know it's an expensive car, but this was 50k, and that's entry-level RS3 now, so yeah, I won't buy an RS3 because of the interior. I'm buying this car because it's got such a beautiful interior. So we've got Audi's virtual cockpit, second generation one. That's new for the facelift. We have got the touchscreen infotainment system, which is great. We've got a traditional climate control panel here, which just looks amazing and just works so well. And a few switches down there, nice illumination. Piano black here, which actually has worn quite well for a 4-year-old 2,000 mile car. We even have S on the key, which is often missing from a lot of cars, little detail like that, so that's quite cool. Obviously, we've got a pretty good boot. It's not the biggest, but it's big enough for me, probably about the same as the Golf. Now, we should go for my first drive in my new daily driver, this S4 Avant TDI. Well, welcome to the first drive in the new Volkswizard daily driver, this Audi S4 Avant TDI, and welcome to the first video during which I'm actually having a massage. Yep, we've got 3 massages to choose from, 3 different intensities. Sounds like a gimmick, but trust me, it's actually really rather pleasant. In fact, it's very pleasant in here generally. I like this car because it's got traditional Audi levels of quality, unlike the current A3, and it's got traditional climate controls, unlike the A6 and A8. So it's the only car in the range, I think, now that combines those 2 things. It's getting a bit long in the tooth now. The basic B9 came out in 2015, so I don't know how long we'll have it, but it's definitely one of those internal combustion engine cars you should buy while you still can, because it's just such a great package. Anyway, enough of that. Let's talk about performance. So 347 horsepower, not really something to write home about, particularly when it's got to pull 1.835 tons. 700 Newton meters of torque, though, is much more impressive. Same as the C7 Audi RS6, and it makes this car a real overtaking tool. Okay, the torque band's not massive being a diesel, but we've got a really slick 8-speed ZF gearbox that just shuffles through the gears when you overtake. So I haven't got anyone in front of me to overtake now, but I will just demonstrate. So over the line, and then whoa! And you've overtaken. It's amazing. In a car wow drag race, this actually beat the B7 Audi RS4, which is a dynamic benchmark for a lot of people.
The S4 diesel just about managed to hold on to 3rd place to beat the old RS4.
Noise-wise, actually it's not too bad. Sometimes it sounds like a truck, but with the fake noise augmentation that can be heard outside, it actually sounds really good. Let's talk about the chassis now. Now, in a nutshell, I think the Golf GTD Estate rides and handles better than this car because it's got basically the multi-link chassis of the Club Sport S, and with those Bilstein dampers, it's amazing. This car, because you want 700 Newton meters of torque, you have to have a big V6 diesel at the front, you have to have 4-wheel drive to deploy that to the road as well, so it's a bit compromised. But then we've got sport differential on this car, adaptive dampers, so we've got a pretty good armoury to try and, well, get round corners. Basically, in comfort mode, it's just about comfortable enough. In dynamic mode, it's not too hard for the road. Sport diff, though, gives you torque vectoring on the rear axle, which basically quells that terrible Audi steer understeer by just putting the nose in, putting a bit of attitude on the back. Only subtle, but enough just to get rid of Audi steer, so you can pile into a corner like this, knowing you're not just going to wash out over the white line. Tyre noise, by the way, worth mentioning, because on that Porsche Taycan I drove last week, it was really loud. It's actually not too bad. 255 section tyres aren't really that big these days, so it's pretty well hushed, even though it's an estate with this parcel shelf probably not closed at the moment. Another thing is that it's actually narrower than a Mk7 Golf across the mirrors, which means it feels really compact. The A6 and bigger than that just feel a bit cumbersome. This feels really agile. It's very impressive. One thing that's not perfect, though, of the brakes. Like a lot of Audis, there's a lot of retardation right at the top of the pedal, and that makes it quite hard to drive smoothly at slow speeds. It's also something to watch when you get into a car with a more linear brake pedal, that you don't end up driving it into the back of the car in front of you. I must watch that when I get back into my Cayman GT4. Hopefully in April I'll retax that car, start using it. But Audi steer, I can't feel any Audi steer. That was beautiful around that roundabout. Slow speed, just a tiny whiff of oversteer to get you around that corner. Yeah, things have moved on, guys. Even with this diesel A4 Estate, it's great. One thing I don't like, even in dynamic mode, which we're in now by the way, the steering, it feels a bit glassy, non-communicative, no texture in the straight ahead position, but actually once you start to load it up, it does get better. We haven't got the rear wheel steering of the A6 because we don't need it. It's a smaller car and it still feels agile. Now, it's obviously hard to get a feel for fuel consumption having just bought the car, but from past experience, I'm pretty confident it will match the WLTP figure of 40.8 on the combined cycle, so you should expect to get that in relatively normal driving. But we'll see, something I'll report on in the longer term. So future plans, and well, I don't plan to modify it. I think it's pretty much perfect. I may well debadge it, but I'm not sure about that really. We'll see how we get on. I do want to take it on a long trip into Europe though, because diesels are just perfect for driving in Europe. Diesel's cheaper and you can do loads of miles without having to stop to put fuel in. And being a V6 with a lot of power on the Autobahn, it shouldn't run out of puff like the 2-litre 4-cylinder diesels tend to do. But I want to go to Germany for one reason, and that is to do an early review on the Mk7.5 Golf, the facelift that is imminent. So if you're in Germany and you work in a dealership, or even if you're at the factory, well, I can come and meet you and do a video on the car in the next few weeks when they start to arrive at dealerships. And get in touch with me directly, Andrew at Volkswizard.co.uk. I think Belgium will probably be quite early compared to the UK as well. So if you're in Belgium and you've got access to the facelift Golf when it comes out, get in touch. I'll be right over there. I'll fill this car with fuel, put my Eurotunnel, and yeah, we'll make a really good video. Also, I think it's worth making a video about these launch spec cars. They're not officially called launch spec like some Audis are, but they've got such a great spec that it's worth talking about, because it's worth seeking them out on the used market. They're going to be on a 69 reg, and it's just like the press car that I drove in that other press launch in August 2019. It's got so much kit. It's got LED matrix headlights, it's got head-up display, it's got sport differential, it's got adaptive dampers, and probably other things that I'm forgetting. No, it hasn't got the comforts and sound pack, so we don't have keyless entry. That's actually not a bad thing. And as for Bose, well, or Bang & Olufsen, the standard stereo is really good. What would you rather have? Sport differential or B&O? If you say B&O, you're probably watching the wrong channel. Anyway guys, as ever, thanks for watching this Volkswizard Daily Driver Collection video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, please comment, please share, and please subscribe. And I'll see you for the next one very soon.